will get the chance to watch May play against Ben Unger, Demir Bounce versus Gruel Mice. Both of these players at 5-1 here in round 7, the NRG Championship Series, Madison, Wisconsin. Let's get started.
Yeah, Ben Unger, we saw on the players to watch leaderboard. May French, someone we have seen a lot here on the NRG series. So this is a clash of titans trying to get into the top 8 and playing 2 of the better decks in the format.
Yeah, and an ideal start here by Ben, right? You got the class into the nowhere to run. You get a nice aggressive start here and just like that. Okay, shout out to the land choice by May.
you like the all text lands?
Well, I like that. It's not that I necessarily like them myself. I would not play with them, but I like that she did it, right? Like that's a commitment. Someone put thought into their basic lands. They didn't just grab whatever was lying around the house. Yeah. And more than that, that's a nice choice. That's just a nice, unique choice.
Ben here going with some classic unhinged basics, those gorgeous full art John Avon lands.
Yeah, hard to beat.
Okay, here's this town ain't big enough, bouncing the Storm Chaser's talent and May's turn 2 Manifold Mouse. So Ben taking a very aggressive stance here, and I really like that from him. You know, one of the reasons that Gruul aggro really rose up in Standard is because its threats and its resilient nature lined up so well against the Dimir mid-range deck. And while Dimir Bounce is very similar to Dimir mid-range, the Storm Chaser's talents give it the ability to be more aggressive. And that is a really strong addition to this matchup because you're not able to take full control of games against Gruul in the face of Questing Druid and Innkeeper's talent. So you do need to put some priority on closing out games. And that's what Ben is doing here. Now has a second copy of Nowhere to Run to take out the redeployed Manifold Mouse. And these 2 Otters coming in for 4. May already down to 10 life and has no aggression established of her own.
Yeah, speaking of hard to beat, this is a picture perfect start here from Ben Unger. Just the talent double, Nowhere to Run. That was a big turn, right? If May was able to keep the blocker there, maybe things play out a little differently. But having the second Nowhere to Run, which is devastating to the course of this game. And here's a Flood Pitch Drowner to tap one of these mice down on top of that. So just coming up, all Ben here in the first game was also on the play, by the way. And has another Flood Pitch Drowner and an Enduring Curiosity in hand. So just an ideal start, essentially. 1, 2, 3, 4 here for Ben Unger. And we'll see what he chooses to do here. How many spells he wants to cast. If he wants to go for the Curiosity, draw some extra cards, or keep up the tap and continue to keep May on the back foot.
Yeah, and it's tough because, normally you would think Enduring Curiosity is the obvious play, but these Manifold Mice are pretty threatening on the way back.
Yeah.
That said, it looks like Ben is going to go with the Enduring Curiosity line, and he gets the block out of May. I assume that tap was, probably block the Flood Pitch Drowner. And now I think Ben can pretty safely deploy the Enduring Curiosity, trade Mouse for Drowner, come across for some damage, and draw a few cards.
Yeah, and as long as you're not, worried about dying on the crackback this turn, which, hey, is something you always have to consider against the Gruul decks in Standard, this is a big refill here for Ben, and it looks like double removal off of it. So
go for the throat and Nowhere to Run. Ideal draws here for Ben Unger to keep this damage coming. And really, I can't highlight enough how important it has been for Ben to be aggressive in these games. If he tried to take a classic defensive posture, as most players do when they play against these red aggro decks, then his Storm Chaser's talent Otter tokens wouldn't have blocked as well. His Enduring Curiosity wouldn't have been as effective. Mm-hmm. And all this damage he's done himself with those underground rivers, he doesn't have any Painless Blue Mana yet, would have been a real problem. But because he is the one being the aggressor, putting May on the back foot, none of that is a problem, and everything is going well. He's kind of flipped the script and says, look at me, I'm the aggro deck now.
Well, it's an excellent point too about the pain lands, because that's cost them a lot of life over the course of this, and that's what honestly even made it somewhat contested here, is because it feels like if you're May, well, that life total is sort of within reach. But this is the 1 turn window basically May has before Ben untaps with those cards. He tapped out for the Enduring Curiosity so he could get the refill from combat. And if he untaps, it's going to be a parade of removal that May's going to be hard pressed to work through. But for this turn, she's got some options.
Yeah, this is the big turn, and May has to take the more defensive stance here. The one thing I'm noticing about her list is 4 copies of Torch the Tower. If she can
Hmm.
bargain a Torch the Tower and cleanly remove the Enduring Curiosity, exile it so it doesn't come back as an enchantment, this board starts to look a lot more manageable. I
Yeah.
haven't gotten a great look at her hand, but the Enduring Curiosity is priority number one for her. After that, you can start cleaning up these otters.
Okay. We spent a lot of time in the tank thinking it through. It's obviously huge. And now it looks like, well, I say it looks like decisions have been made. Man is getting tapped. We'll see what May has decided is the line. Emberheart Challenger. Start
And
things off.
looks like her hand is all aggressive elements. It's Innkeeper's Talent, Monstrous Rage, Hired Claw, and then the
Mhm.
Challenger that she just deployed. So that's not a hand that's going to play well in this position because of the way Ben has approached the matchup.
Yeah. And we know that Ben is sitting on multiple removal spells in his hand. So uh this both of these creatures are
Uh,
probably not long for this world after this. But hey, look at that. A 1 drop found off the challenger. Maybe we see that
uh,
follow up.
what May really needed there was Torch the Tower.
Yeah.
If she hit Torch the Tower, she can sack the Innkeeper's Talent to bargain as an
Mhm.
enchantment and deal with the Enduring Curiosity. But as is, um, oh, actually, so now, oh wow, because of this damage, Ben's at exactly 14. This
Right.
Monstrous Rage is potentially lethal. This is a 3/3 right now. Emperor Heart, Monstrous Rage will make it a 7-power double striker because of the Manifold Mouse. So Ben actually has to block away the Enduring Curiosity.
So
Okay.
it will, yeah, this is what we talked about. The Painlands coming back to change a game that otherwise would have been pretty, academic for Ben.
And now, does May want to keep her Ember Heart Challenger around? I guess it's going to stay around regardless because it is double strike from the
Right.
Manifold Mouse.
So
So
you
it's a
could
question of, does she want to force through a bunch of damage or does she want to have a blocker back to protect her own life total with that Heartfire hero?
right. And now you know that the uh this will be back as an enchantment, the curiosity will. So it's one less attacker you have to worry about. And now you have a blocker if you really want it, I guess. Now there are a lot of cards in hand for Ben that look very strong. No fourth land though. So 2 spells it looks like he's going to have access to, but it means one of them probably won't be Kaido.
Yeah.
But facing down 3 creatures plus, I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe if you're Ben, you think you're getting, you could, think you're getting tricked here. But it seemed pretty clear that May was debating a monstrous rage there. He was playing around monstrous rage. It's something you're just going to have to consider throughout the game here. So if you're Ben, this is not as simple as you want it to be. With May down to 7 life, and you have the curiosity giving you more additional cards, but that is where he starts, is with turning both of these sideways. May prompting or offering anyway a trade.
But it is not going to be a trade as Ben has several spells to pump up these otters. So I like the way Ben has played this. Once he respects the Monstrous Rage on May's turn, he has to keep respecting it, like you
Right.
said, for the rest of this game. And so there's no reason to be blindly aggressive. He was 1 damage short. If he just clears away the blockers and plays 2 spells, the otters are 3/3s, but May's at 7. So this way, he now has removal spells for the other 2 creatures, and May has voluntarily blocked away her Heartfire hero. So he's
Hmm.
dealt with every potential threat. There is the Soulstone Sanctuary still on May's side of the battlefield, but without the, I
Right.
guess that you don't need the Manifold Mouse necessarily. If May has a land, Innkeeper's Talent plus Monstrous Rage will make that a 7-power attacker, but Ben's still at 13, so that's not an issue.
Yeah, and Ben's picked up Sanctuary of his own. He might get a chance to use later. But the thing is also now Ben has enough cards, or at least he has more cards. He's got the damage has kind of been done by the enduring curiosity, and now maybe he can think about keeping back a blocker, prompting a monstrous rage, prompting removal, and opt into that kind of line. If he decides I've got enough cards and just want to protect my life total for the moment. So again, another big turn for May. This has been a really nice back and forth game.
Yeah, the threat of Monstrous Rage and Manifold Mouse has really allowed May to stay in it and forced Ben to pull back and play at least a little bit defensively. So The rest of this game is going to be about Ben trying to find that balance. Don't open up a window where May can steal this game or you've been ahead the entire time, but still try to close the game as quickly as you can, because the more draws that May gets off the top of her deck, the more chances she gets to find something that can really pull her all the way back to even.
Well, and here we go. Screaming Nemesis was the play here for May. Now thinking about the Innkeeper's talent trigger. Ben just kind of, they're just quiet over there, just head down, watching it, thinking about, okay, I know I've got these removal spells in my hand, or at least they go for the throat here. Where am I going to have to use it? Waiting to see, try not to give anything away while May chooses a target.
Yeah, and Ben also has the potential to play Flood Pit's Drowner if he wants to do that, because that will allow him to get a slightly bigger attack on his next turn. So really just wants to see where this counter goes. May deciding to put it on the Manifold Mouse. So I assume Ben really would like to play the Drowner and get another attacker on his turn and tap down the...
Yeah.
See, can probably just tap down the Manifold Mouse, because Screaming Nemesis is not going to kill you from 13.
Yeah, you have to... Okay, so you'd have to go to 12. So, but there's no double strike. It's not a mouse over there, right? But so it looks like the Manifold's Mouse has attacked. So... not been tapped down. So this could open up a couple lines. Holding your Drowner for as long as possible gives you some options here if Ben is going to commit to the go for the throat instead. And there we go. Monstrous Rage coming in on the mouse.
And so this is going to be a 5-power double striker. So that's 10 if Ben just wants to take it and go to 3. The problem there is then if he tries to play any blue spells, he can die to a Burst Lightning. We know that May French doesn't have any main deck Burst Lightnings in her list, but this is closed deck list for Ben. He does not know that.
Yeah, I mean, there's also this is, I don't think, necessarily a concern, but if you go for the throat and there's like a Snakeskin Veil or something as May's last card, that's also pretty rough. But it looks like the Monstrous Rage resolved, and Ben takes it to go down to 3.
Okay, so this should be the Flood Pit Drowner is now just lethal. You tap down one blocker, you untap, go for the throat the other, and now you have 6 damage.
Held that Drowner as long as possible and was able to make it work there at the end. Very nicely done by Ben. Was able to just steal himself there. I'll go to 3, no problem. And just was able to work out in the end. A really great game 1 there. Dimir Bounce first, Gruul Mice, and now onto the sideboards.
It's a great lesson in what to do, how to play when you're ahead. Because a lot of players might just have taken that attack, from the Emberheart Challenger and died to Monstrous Rage without realizing that May had the potential to deal 14 that turn. Ben slowed down, thought to himself, "What are the ways I can lose this game? Figure out those ways and then play around them." And he shut every single window, played very patiently and not blindly aggressive. And that is exactly how you close out games and get to the top 8 of 130-person Magic tournaments.
Yep, very well done. May was in a difficult spot there, was almost able to pull it out. But now has access to the sideboard. We've got a lot of mostly red options here. What are you looking at from May's side?
So the first card to really look at is Obstinate Baloth, which is your way of punishing Hopeless Nightmare. That said, sometimes you get into mind games against these bounce decks where they cut out Hopeless Nightmare, which tends to be weaker against aggressive decks anyway and weaker on the draw. So we'll see if maybe May, only wants those when Ben is on the play, or if she wants them in, both sides. Other than that, I think it's going to be gearing up to play a little bit longer of games. So the 4th copy of Questing Druid looks very attractive. The Obliterating Bolt is a nice way to answer potential Kaidos or potential Enduring Curiosities. And then, normally Sunspiraling's good against the Esper variant of these decks. A few more basics in the Dimir build. So it'll be more questionable as to whether or not May wants access to that in this particular bounce matchup.
Yeah, well said. All right, we'll get a look over at Ben's side here next as he decides, well, I've got a lot of cards in my main deck, which are pretty good at slowing down the aggro. But if I want any more against Gruul, well, there are options over here. You've got, honestly, a lot, right? You
Yeah,
can
a
look
lot of
at
good
touchdowns
anti.
for removal. You've got even as far as the look at the bottom of the sideboard there, nothing but removal, honestly. And then even tide binders if you want to attack triggers.
Yeah, I think the cheap removal is great. Cut downs and the Witch's Vanity. I think the sweepers will likely come in, especially Gix's command that can pump one of
Yeah.
your creatures, make it a big lifelinker, and then of course Shielded the Apocalypse. At this point, the bane of aggro players' uh, existence. That'll certainly be coming in for Ben as well.
Yeah, remember when Shieldred was just everything in standard? And basically it just costs too much mana for no ETB effect these days. But in this matchup in particular, it can start to run away with things.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to kill these days. We see Witchstalker Frenzy in all the red decks. May has one in
Yeah.
the main and one in the sideboard. So we'll likely see the second Witchstalker Frenzy come in for May as well, anticipating things like Shieldred and even potentially Preacher of the Schism is a common card out of these sideboards that
Mhm.
the big red removal can answer. Ben doesn't have those, of course, but like I said earlier, it's a closed deck list, so our players will be potentially playing around cards that aren't there because they are so common in other deck lists of these archetypes.
Yeah, I love a good closed deck list event, especially
Yeah.
when players are playing things like Azorius Omniscience and things like that. And when all of these bounce decks have slightly different flavors, and knowing what flavor you're playing against impacts your sideboarding decisions, the closed deck list works out. Ben actually shipped that hand back. It had what looked like a pretty aggressive start.
Yeah, but I think his mana situation was pretty rough. I think it was a
Mhm.
tapped land on turn one, and that was going to force him to be a little bit slow out of the gates for being on the draw. So
Especially on the draw. That's
yeah,
right.
against these red decks, even though Gruul is set up to play longer games a lot of the time, can play those games. You still have to respect those, Heartfire Hero into Manifold Mouse draws and make sure that you have early interaction. And this hand also looks good, but again, awkward mana. No black mana here for Ben, but if he hits it, he's got some early removal. He has a Shieldred. So this could be a keep on 6 and just knock the top of the deck and hope it gives you what you need.
Yeah, talk about that, Ross, because most people look at that hand and just immediately ship it because you have uh black cards and blue lands, but you say you just knock the top of the deck, and sometimes that's just the right thing to do, and he's rewarded here.
Yeah, once you're on 6 cards, you got to say, like, what are my odds of winning on a 5 card hand versus what are my odds of ripping the Black Source in a couple turns?
Yeah.
And oftentimes the odds of ripping the Black Source are higher. Here, Ben gets rewarded, draws Dark Shores for turn one, and now we've got a game.
I watched a player keep a zero land hand in the top 8 of a pro tour because they were on a mold of 4 or 5 or whatever, and it was like old school mulligans where you didn't even get to see 7 cards. So they that was just a statistically correct thing for them to do in that circumstance. It didn't work out, but props to them for being able to do that on camera. Most people would not be brave enough to do that. Ben, no fear, does the same kind of calculation, and we'll see how the game works out for him. But that decision certainly worked out for him,
Yeah.
because here he was with the black mana able to interact on turn 2.
And May here with a very slow hand. No play on turns 1 or 2. Just plays an Emberheart Challenger, sort of representing a Snakeskin Veil there, leaving up the Gorge. No Veils in her deck, so the Go for the Throat cleanly answered. And now she untaps on turn 4 with no pressure and Ben at 20 life. Okay. Offspring of Manifold Mouse. These are the kinds of plays that you see more often in the post sideboard games where the Gruul deck is playing more for value and a little bit less for speed. Let my creature become a natural 2-for-1. No
Yeah.
Ritter Run can now deal with half of it. And May, has come out of the gates a little bit slower, but has an extra creature left over after these early removal spells.
And has a rock face village to help speed things up later. But here we go. Ben back on the aggro plans, turning his token sideways, picking up an extra card off the Enduring Curiosity.
Yeah.
And it was another land that's a second black source for him. So fully everything unlocked at this point, I think, once he untaps.
Yeah, this is the downside here of trying to play a little bit slower is that Ben's card advantage engines, Kaido and Enduring Curiosity, depend on him attacking. And if you play slow, you open the window for him to be able to attack profitably. That said, this time May does have the Torch the Tower, so she has a clean answer to Enduring Curiosity. One of these tokens can get sacrificed to bargain and make sure that Curiosity dies and doesn't come back.
Yeah, great line here from May. Also with the just as able, like you mentioned, the natural 2-for-1 with the offspring ability. When Ben's got a bunch of 1-for-1 removal and no loop set up, and not plus the torch to tower there, really gives May an okay board position here, despite the fact that Ben is untapping on turn 5 with 18 life. May is in an okay spot with a Monstrous Rage in hand to try to force through a big turn. And if you're Ben, you have to decide between tapping out or near tapping out here, I guess, for Shieldred versus taking a line with some of the other cards in your hand.
I have to say, I also really like May's attack last turn.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she had a pretty obvious line of offspring another manifold mouse, torch the tower, sacking the new token, attack with the old token. But by attacking first, she gives Ben the opportunity to block, and then she can just torch the tower for 2 damage because the manifold mouse has double strike, and cleanly answer the enduring curiosity without giving up one of the tokens. Ben, of course, saw through that, just took the damage. But May,
That's a great catch.
Giving your opponents the opportunity to make mistakes is a sign of a strong player.
Yeah, no, it's a great catch. And Ben, no Shieldred, instead going to wipe the field here, playing the small board wipe and forcing May to start over, which, as we mentioned, she is equipped to do with that rock face village, hasting up the mouse, starting the attacks again.
Yeah. Heartfire Hero going to come across for 3. And now Ben, still under the gun. Finds another Malicious Eclipse, so has several options to deal with this Heartfire Hero. See if he tries to take a turn off Shieldred. Yeah, and he does.
Well, this is the window where you usually want to try it. Your life total is reasonable. You hope, if I can just get through this turn with my opponent only having the 1 creature in play, well, then I can start the Shieldred engine going, right? You can untap with it. It's one of those protect the queen, or in this case, protect the praetor, and you just gain a bunch of life while grinding the game out. But the window is open here for May because that's a second Heartfire Hero. It's got haste. We know there's a Monstrous Rage in hand. Could be a big attack here.
So this is an attack for 5. With the Monstrous Rage, it'll be 9.
I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be enough. We know the other card for May is a land. Looks like no blocks and a pass for May. Not going to pull the trigger on the Monstrous Rage. Of course, if she draws Manifold Mouse or something here, that Monstrous Rage becomes far more threatening. On the other hand, Ben is now untapped with Shieldred and is actually getting aggressive with it.
Yeah, and the 3rd black source off the top is really important. So likely going to lead with the Malicious Eclipse here because it answers both mice. May going to be forced to Monstrous Rage in response to save one of the mice, and Ben can respond with Go for the Throat, clear both mice away, take 2 damage from the trigger, go to 7, and everything will be clear. Ooh, looks like he's actually letting this resolve.
It's an ensure. Yep. Okay.
Okay. This is going to result in him taking 1 more damage.
The power goes down. Yeah.
It still gets exiled because of the eclipse. Now, Ben, ahead of me there.
Yeah. If it would die this turn.
Yeah. So lets it resolve, make sure that it gets exiled, takes no damage, and now, just has the Shieldred on an empty board.
Yeah, this has worked out very cleanly for Ben here. Up a game, trying to move to 6-1 here in our 10K standard showdown in Madison.
And with the Soulstone Sanctuary and the Storm Chasers talent ready to go to level 2, I don't see a really obvious series of draws for May to get back into this game.
Yeah, the second, just the series of board wipes, and the one sideboard Shieldred did exactly what Shieldred does and wraps the game up in Unger 6-1. We'll hope to play for a top 8 spot next round here in our G series in Madison. Nice match there. A lot of, you mentioned, especially in that first game, small edges that both players were looking for there, and Ben was able to play tightly and not allow any leaks, essentially, right, in his game there to give the Gruul deck a chance to steal it.
Yeah, Ben very tight playing from ahead, and also impressed by the way he was able to leverage his own deck's versatility. Game one, he comes out really aggressive because that's what his draw dictated, and he's able to put May on the back foot, and that played a huge role in him winning that game. Game two, very different. He brings in
Mhm.
Malicious Eclipse and Shieldred. He plays like a Dimir control deck, and he's able to do that effectively as well. When you have a deck that can win playing aggressive and playing defensive, you've really got something strong, and Ben will look to take it all the way to the trophy if he can.
Well, yeah, and that's the nice part of the Demir deck is that it can shift between those very easily, right? Because the cards you play early are the cards you can loop late to kind of have both sides of it there. And Enduring Curiosity has been, I think, one of the more interesting cards we've seen today. And everyone hang with us. We're trying to get an interview with Ben. But Enduring Curiosity, I think, has been one of the most interesting cards because at times it looks, I don't want to say bad, but almost bad where, oh, if I tap out for this 4-mana Enduring Curiosity, my opponent answers it for 2 mana with a This Sounding Big Enough, or a 1 mana with a Torch the Tower. It becomes such a mana negative play for you that it's tough to dig out of. On the other hand, its power is just unmatched in all of these games where it connects, or it gives you just a window to connect with the random otter tokens you have around, and then your opponent can't catch up. So let's go down to Ben and ask him about it. Ben, congrats on the win. That was a really nicely played match there, all the way through.
Thanks, appreciate it. I tried my best.
Yeah, very impressive. Love that you were able to take such an aggressive stance there in game one. So, tell me about how you thought through that first game, and really how often the Demir bounce deck is able to do that in a matchup where normally you would think you're going to be on the defensive.
Yeah, 100% depends on kind of what your hand looks like. The deck is so flexible in its like range of things it's trying to do. I've had matches today where I've had probably 12 lands in play and just been playing a really long, grindy game with stuff like the Curiosity, This Town Ain't Big Enough, Storm Chasers leveling up. At one point, I had 2 of them earlier on level 3, so like 20 mana worth of stuff in the Storm Chasers. But obviously, the deck is capable of aggressive draws, and I just got pretty lucky. I think game one, like I saw my hand and I kind of envisioned that with Pain Lands being my main source of black mana. Like I probably couldn't afford to play the control role or go too long because the red deck just has so much reach with Lightning Strike,
Mhm.
Burst Lightning, etc.,
Haste
etc.
Breacher is
Yeah.
Yeah, so they just like go long really well too. So I figured I just wanted to try to shut the door as quick as I could.
awesome, awesome. And as far as this Demir bounce deck in general, this is a deck that has kind of fallen off a little bit recently. I think Esper Pixie has sort of established itself as the more popular sort of bounce variant. What do you like about the Demir bounce deck relative to the Esper one?
100% the mana. It's just the mana. Mana is like atrocious. You'll lose to your mana if you play Esper. Um, I've joked with my friends about you can get Tron in standard now, and Tron is the 3 fast lands for Esper. So like that deck, it's very much. I like the deck a lot. I've played a little bit of Esper, but just found the mana to be too clunky. I was losing too many games to red just to like from taking pain, and so I kind of feel like it forces you into more of a, I don't know, it forces you into game plans when you don't always want to be there. And I feel like with Demir's mana base, you again just have more flexibility, can make more choices. And I think in general, if you're able to make more game impacting decisions, usually if you're a better player, those go well for you.
Ah, yes, the all important agency.
Oh, I wasn't gonna say it. You said it.
Agency
You
is
said
a
it.
very
You
good
said it. I
job.
didn't. I didn't.
Oh, I'll happily say it. I have no compunction.
Yeah, I'm addicted to that. I'm addicted to agency.
Well,
Agency pilled.
Yep, that's me.
Ben, what are you hoping to see or not see next round? How do you feel Demir matches up against sort of the popular decks in the room today?
Well, what I would hope to see next round is a handshake in the top 8, but
Yeah, well, one of
uh,
these.
yeah, one of those like Ross is giving me. But I would say, allegedly by the numbers, I'm supposed to have a decent red matchup, which I lost round 1 today to red, and I just got absolutely rolled. So I was kind of expecting to get rolled in the camera match. Luckily, was prepared, and the draws lined up well for me. I think I got extremely lucky. I think May played well and did what she could. I'd say I probably don't want to see, like, I'd imagine Domain's probably pretty tough. I have a lot of sideboard stuff for it, but
Mhm.
it's just kind of the deck when they have like like one or two up the beanstalks. It feels really uphill battle type.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the matchup
Well,
where you really want to be aggressive and you miss the optimistic scavengers, right?
Yeah. I mean, the white cards between Pixie, Scavenger. I've seen some lists even playing like Spiteful Hex Mage. Like I think
mhm.
you can take a lot more of a Delver approach if you're on that kind of variant of Esper. Whereas Dimir, it's gonna be a hard time, but that's all right. I signed up for it.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
looks like you've signed up for at least a couple more rounds of playing Demir, and good luck.
yeah.
Appreciate it.
Well,
Thank you guys.
thank you, man. Appreciate it. All right. Well, welcome back into the booth. I think we have a backup match from that round. We are not done yet here in round 7 of the NRG Championship Series 10K event here in Madison. I'm Corbin Hosser with Ross Merriam. That was a really excellent match with one of the best longtime players in the NRG series to watch right there. Honestly, I guess opposed to 2 of the best longtime players, but tough draws there for May. Really nicely executed by Ben from an advantageous position.
I think that's a match that May could have squeaked out against a weaker opponent, but here in the later rounds of the tournament against someone like Ben, the draws just didn't line up for her, and she's going to have to, make a do with an X2 or X3 finish here.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have a treat for you in our next match here. That is Nestle Hickman on the left, Mono Red Aggro, and on the right, an old school Magic player for those of you who have been around the tournament scene for a long time, Matt Severa on Jeskai Oculus.
Yeah, this is a man with several standard Grand Prix wins on his resume. So, no stranger to the feature match area and to the business end of tournaments. He is not going to be intimidated by that NRG championship jacket that Wesley Hickman is wearing.
This is the two flavors of intimidating Magic player, right? We've got the gear on the left, which it means they obviously are serious about their craft.
Yeah.
And the we've got the jacket on the right. I rolled in. I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm just roll out of my couch and win a GP on my spare time, kind of a vibe here, and that's I love it. Matt Severa is a excellent Magic player who's been at this for a long time, and we're deep into the match already here. So here we go. Monastery Swift Spear, Burst Lightning runs into Spell Pierce.
Yeah, so really just Hickman on Mono Red trying to come out and be the aggressor. He knows that the Oculus deck is going to be favored going long with things like Abhorrent Oculus and really just the power and card advantage from Steam Core Scholar, from Inti and things like that. So he needs to be the aggressor here. So and that needs to get him dead.
Yeah, well, this is a good start, I guess. If you're Nestle, you've got 2 1-drops in play. You've got a Burst Lightning in hand. I'm sure that first one running into Spell Pierce isn't the end of the world there. Inti's a powerful threat, though. That unlocks a lot of things out of the Oculus deck, both the sort of the game A plan of discard this Oculus, put it back into play, but also just unlocks a lot of card advantage and long-term selection out of the deck as well. And that is why we see another Burst Lightning pointed at it and Torch the Tower in response.
Yeah, respond to the prowess trigger, so it has to do that before the spell resolves to make sure it's in response to prowess and answer the Ember Challenger. Okay, big turn. Yeah, here's Steam Core Scholar. It discards Oculus and now has the helping hand. So the big eye is here, and the pressure is on Hickman to end this game as quickly as he possibly can. I do.
Yeah, that is why you play Jeskai Oculus right there. You play the Scholar, draw, discard Oculus Graveyard, helping hand it back into play, pass the turn, immediately get that Manifest Dread trigger. So even if your opponent has an answer, you're still going to get some value out of it. And if they don't have an answer, it's a 5/5 flyer that is going to end the game in short order. So all of a sudden, a game that looked okay for Nestle is changed around quite a bit, and that's why we see the attack. We see a monstrous rage. He's going to try to force through as much damage here as possible.
Yeah, I love the double block from Matt here. Could have easily just said, single block both of your creatures, and this monstrous rage would have, been a huge problem. Now he at least trades for that Heartfire Hero, takes a pretty big chunk of damage, but gets to untap with Hickman on 1 card in hand and still has his Oculus to take over this game. Okay, here's another Steam Core Scholar.
All right, another Oculus into the graveyard for Matt. Thinking it through, he's like, "Okay, well, I did my thing. I'm alive. I untapped. I have my creature. How do I close things out from here? That's sort of the next step." And we
Closes
attack.
it up
We'll
by
get our
attacking.
get our manifest dread in, and just all right. I guess I'll take being alive right now. And 12 life is a decent cushion for Matt.
Yeah, and Monastery Swiftspear is the least threatening creature. It's not a Manifold Mouse, it's not a Heartfire Hero, it's not an Emperor Challenger. Those are the ones that can really get out of hand very quickly. The Manifest Dreads and the Steam Core Scholars can handle a Monastery Swiftspear, and Matt has a very clean path to victory over these 3 turns. He attacks for 5. Next turn, I believe his last card is Recommission. He brings back the other Oculus, attacks for 5 again with the first one, and then he has 10 in the air on the following turn, and that closes it out very cleanly and neatly.
Yeah, the chunks of 5 with the Oculus is not inconvenient.
And now we have a very interesting Screaming Nemesis. Does Matt want to double block this and take 4? He just chumps it with the Scholar.
Okay, so there's that damage, which will go.
Looks like it went upstairs instead of at the Manifest Dread.
Right.
So now no life gain for Matt for the rest of this game.
All right. Well, despite it's not as simple as Oculus and play game over. Wesley is hanging around here with the Screaming Nemesis threat. That card is it makes blocking really awkward, especially when you're playing as a block with a much larger creature. So another Scholar here for Matt. It's going to look at a couple more cards, figure out what he wants.
Very interesting. Decides to go for the Scholar here and not another Oculus. Okay. Has Bitter Reunion. So giving haste will still turn this into a 2-turn clock if he wants to. That's another Recommission. Or no, that's a Helping Hand. Okay, so Helping Hand going to put Severo to 9. It goes for another Scholar.
Okay, well, this has been Matt has churned through a lot of cards on this turn, and he's built a pretty decent board out of it. And here we go. We're going to attack. Wesley going to think about where to go from here. He's counting it up. But if you're Matt, you're not out of the woods. You're at 9 life. Monstrous Rage is obviously the consideration. Just jump blocking the Screaming Nemesis isn't even always the best answer. This is you really need to try to close the game. That's why this attack comes through, which I believe will put Hickman down to 8.
Yeah, and the good news is that 1 Monstrous Rage is not enough for lethal here. It's a 4-point attack. Rage represents 4 more.
And there we go. It doesn't.
Oh, Matt was at 1. I think we had life totals incorrect there for. That makes a lot more sense why he was going for those Steam Core Scholars. He needed to find an answer to the Screaming Nemesis.
That's unfortunate. We got it figured out. That said, we're not done with this match. We've got that game figured out. Matt was able to pick up game 2. We're going to pop over to game 3, where we will find these players going at it with a lot on the line here. So we'll head down to game 3 when you get a chance, which, hey, is right now. Players knotted up 1-1. Wesley was able to, it looked like, finish off that last game. I had spotted a lightning strike in hand. So if Matt was down to 1 life, it wasn't going to work out whether the Screaming Nemesis was around or not. So he takes that one, and we want to make sure we get you to the next and ultimate round of the day in time. So we're going to jump into game 3, Heartfire Hero, starting things off for Wesley.
Okay, this is the ideal start for any red aggro deck in standard. Heartfire Hero turn 1, Manifold Mouse turn 2, and no red removal for Matt Severa on turn 1, but does have the Pyroclasm to clear away both.
There's a nice old school answer from the old school player. Pyroclasm, getting rid of both your creatures. Ideal start, gone. I mean, Matt's down to 14 life already. That's not irrelevant. And with the Rockface Village, that certainly becomes pretty relevant as Wesley can haste out any creatures here. But Matt needed a catch-up card to have a shot here against that kind of aggressive start, and he had it.
Yeah, without Torch to the Tower on turn 1, he absolutely needed the Pyroclasm. And now the question for Wesley is, how do I go about, rebuilding? And I like the Hired Claw. Give it haste. Utilize that Rockface Village as much as you can.
Yeah. Yeah, because Matt's life total is already under pressure, right? So Matt, though, he's able to play the Scholar, and he's able to put an Oculus into the graveyard, so the pressure is on. Now, this looks like a lot of options here for Hickman. Looks like a Swift Spear. That's a hasty creatures.
I see Swift Spear, Land, Monstrous Rage, and Lithomantic Barrage. So he's got the Barrage rolled up to answer that Oculus on a later turn. But right now, he has a very strong attack. He can play Swift Spear, attack with both creatures. Once the Hired Claw trigger resolves, he can pump the Hired Claw with its own ability. That gets it to 3 toughness. So the Scholar doesn't block well there. And Monstrous Rage will pump up the Swift Spear. So
it doesn't block well there either. Now, this was all around a very nice setup for Wesley. And even if you're mad and you're able to get that Oculus back next turn, we know that Wesley has an answer lined up.
Yeah. And now the only question is, does Wesley want to play the Monstrous Rage right now and push damage? It looks like the answer is yes. So
that makes sense to me.
So this looks like it's going to be 5 coming across since the and +1 from the Hired Claw trigger. So I think Severus should be falling to 8 here.
Now, obviously, a board wipe from Matt here would go pretty well. That would go a long way. But if he doesn't have that and he hasn't slammed that and he's instead forced into the Oculus plan, Wesley's in a great spot. So this is the turn of the game for Matt, trying to find a way back into things here. What is the play?
Yeah, I don't have a great look at Matt's hand. What would be really nice is Recommission, because that would get Oculus onto the battlefield untapped and give it a +1/+1 counter so it can survive that Lithomantic Barrage. But it looks like Matt has Helping Hand, which is significantly worse in this spot. Normally much better since it only costs 1, but sometimes you pay the extra mana, or sometimes you get what you pay for, I should say.
Yeah, that's right. Fear of missing out. Start things off here for Matt. It provides another blocker, certainly not irrelevant.
And pits as a land, finds a Get Lost. That's a pretty solid removal spell here. But Hickman really well set up to utilize the maps. So yeah, Matt probably going to wait for combat to play that Get Lost, so that Hickman will have to use the maps post combat or on his following turn.
Yeah, that was a nice pickup for Matt, though. Able to go removal spell plus blocker on that turn is probably about as much as he could hope for in the circumstance, sitting at such a scant life total and really staring down a really threatening board, because as we know, the Rockface Village makes any follow-up creature even more threatening. But instead, it was just for Wesley a land picked up.
Yeah, so Matt is pretty close to stabilized here on board with the Get Lost, but really good point from you noting that Rockface Village is going to make it difficult for him to turn the corner. And that's what he needs to do to win this game. He needs to get himself into a spot where he can start attacking. And it's really difficult to do that at a low life total against these red decks, because they have a bunch of burn spells and haste creatures, and Rockface Village compounding that problem. Okay, so the map's getting immediately sacrificed here, even though the tokens weren't put onto the battlefield, and Hickman just finds 2 lands off of them.
Well, good to get through those lands, I guess. But if you're Matt, I suppose that's the best case scenario. Now you've got your blocker, your life total, and you're untapping.
Yeah, if the Swift Spear had gotten to 3 power, suddenly the fear of missing out looks really mopey and weak. But now it remains a good blocker, and that's a win for Matt Severa.
Scholar. 2 lands off the Scholar. Okay. A lot of lands in hand for Matt.
Yeah, it looks like 4 lands. Helping Hand is his hand, but the Helping Hand is a lot better on this turn. This is the Port Oculus is the best corner turner that he has access to. Yeah, has to send 2 of those lands away to the Scholar, but that's fine.
Oh, he's counting up his card types for Delirium here. Okay.
Yeah, looks like I can see on the boogie board there, Hickman down to 16. So looks like the fear of missing out did get in twice. There is Delirium. Now Thundering Falls puts Prosthetic Memory into the graveyard, and here's the Helping Hand. Matt well set up here to turn the corner very quickly. This is
even if you answer it for Wesley, right? We talked about it, still gets the value.
That looked like a Hired Claw drawn. So as the mana to answer the Oculus, play the Hired Claw, use Rockface Village, and use the Hired Claw's ability after to pump. So that will make it a 3/3 attacker, and you'll have a 2/3 Swift Spear. And Matt will be at 4. So you're at least trading on a 1-for-1 basis against a double block and getting in some damage.
Yeah, the math looks okay here, right? If you're Wesley, given what you just laid out.
Matt would have the option to double block one of the creatures, likely the Hired Claw, and take 2 from the Swift Spear, going to 2. Or he could protect his life total and chump block both attackers.
Right. Putting himself into lightning strike range is something he's going to consider very heavily.
Yeah. And, also Hickman's still at 16. Once the Oculus is gone, there's not a lot of pressure coming from Severa. Unless that Manifest is another Oculus.
True.
Okay,
well, here we go. The action's going to get going. Wesley plays out the Lizard, hastes it up. Barrage
is the Scholar. So this is Hickman saying, I want to get you dead.
I like it. He's going to have a lot of outs on his next turn, I think.
So forcing a chump block from the Manifest.
And falling to 4 life on the trigger there from the Lizard. That's what they're noting.
And then he's going to fall to 2 from the Swift Spear coming across after the Manifest chump blocks the Hired Claw.
Which also makes something weird, like another Hired Claw and out, right? Because then you have 2 points of trigger, not to mention any burn. So Wesley said it by pointing that removal spell at the blocker and not at the Oculus, he's giving himself a lot of outs over the next turn, and he might only get 1 turn. But he's given himself a lot more outs on that turn as opposed to trying to tread water.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting how Matt decides to attack on his following turn. He consented with both FOMO and Oculus, used the FOMO to untap Oculus with no intention of re-attacking, and then Oculus plus the Manifest Red from its trigger gives him 2 blockers on the following turn, but then you leave yourself vulnerable to a haste creature.
Yeah. Really nice ending to this one, that's for sure. We got our money's worth here in game 3. Both of these players trying to go to 6-1.
Feels like a reanimation spell drawn for Matt, which is excellent here. Can rebuy the Scholar and dig a little further to his deck for a removal spell or a way to close out this game. Yeah, looks like Recommission. That's the best one since he wants his creatures untapped. So 3/3 Scholar, draw 2. I think that's a Helping Hand.
Yeah.
And another Oculus. Wow. The hits keep coming.
Talk about turning the corner.
Yeah. So now discard Oculus, Helping Hand that Oculus. Now you're going to get 2 Manifests, and you have the Scholar as a blocker, and you can attack with both FOMO and Oculus and untap the Oculus. So you'll have Oculus, 2 Manifest Reds, and Scholar as blockers. It's really just going to come down to that classic, can the red deck draw the burn spell?
Well, and that's why Wesley's play last turn, I think, is pretty nice because he maybe recognized not that it would go exactly like this, but that the next turn was likely to, no matter what he did, work out such that he needed to draw a win on that turn. And he gave himself slightly more outs by taking the lines he did to that key turn. So it's just setting up for a big draw from Wesley Hickman here.
Okay. Well, Severa took a different path. He went for Steamcore Scholar, trying to find a removal spell for the Lizard to take Lizard out as an out, but did not find it. And instead, there's still 3 blockers back. So I think we're still just on Burns.
Oh my gosh.
It's the Hired Claw.
Wow. Both players recognized that this corner case out could be there. Wesley played to it, and he found it with the triggers. What a win.
That is incredible. Matt tried his hardest to play around it, but couldn't find the removal spell, and it is indeed the top card. So
wow.
Wesley Hickman takes down that match and is likely going to be in our top 8.
That was a great match, if that's what sends in there. A great ending. Talk about playing to your outs, and this is what we talked about in the last in the top half of the round there, about when you get into the late rounds here. Some of these games that you win against, maybe you can win in round 1, round 2, you win at F&M. Those edges are not always there in the end of round 7. That was an excellent one, and you know what? We have another round before our top 8 that's going to decide that top 8. So thank you everybody for hanging out with us here at the NRG Championship Series in Madison. I'm Corbin Hostler with Ross. We will be back on the other side of the break with round 8 action.